Breaking news as Lowe's issues a dire warning about the state of the economy and the state of the consumer. And today I have Mitch Vexler, industry professional, seasoned developer, and quantitative financing expert with us to help break down what does all of this mean for the economy? What does all of this mean for the consumer? We're also going to show you guys data manipulation. Undeniable, beyond a shadow of doubt, very clear data manipulation. And then we're going to talk about and end by potentially talking about an even bigger problem that's going on behind the scenes. And before I begin, happy Thursday evening. Hopefully we got this video out when it's not too late. And Mitch, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Everything's okay. Just plugging away.
You just plugging away? Yeah?
Yeah.
You keeping me on my tiptoes, buddy.
Do you want to discuss the numbers of our petition first?
Yeah. Give the viewers an update on the petition.
Just to let everybody know what's happening. So we're up to 1287, but what's so interesting, that's a good number. It's obviously growing, but what's so interesting, we now have at least one signature from 47 different states. So the problem is clearly a national problem. We know it goes all the way into Canada. So it's gaining momentum and it's getting into the right people's hands. And we just need more people to keep pushing these videos out, because the more they do, the more it gets into circulation. The more it gets into circulation, the more petitions get signed, and the more people begin to understand how big this problem really is.
Absolutely. And you guys don't forget, the petition is in the description. I'll get back to that here at the end. Starting with our first article from CNBC titled "Lowe's Cuts Full Year Outlook as It Expects," here's the key, weaker home improvement sales. Now, 3 key bullet points, and then I'm only going to read a few paragraphs here, but bullet point number 1, Lowe's beat fiscal second quarter earning expectations, but there's a big but, missed on sales and cut its full year outlook. Number 2, an interview with CNBC, CEO said consumers are waiting for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. So I guess they're not waiting to make more money. That would be a good thing, but that's just my opinion. Bullet point 3, the retailer's results come a week after rival Home Depot said it expected a weaker second half of the year. The company said it now projects total sales between $82.7 billion, a lot of money still, and $83 for the full year, compared with the estimate of 84 to 85. Now, when we go down here, you guys, and kind of look at what's going on, what are they saying? Again, he said the consumers are waiting for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. He added shoppers are also under pressure from the economic backdrop. Inflation remains high, he said, and big ticket purchases are being delayed as consumers sit back and wait for interest rates to fall. Again, I say, well, what about the prices? Okay, what about the prices? About 90% of Lowe's customers are homeowners, and most have a fixed 30-year fixed rate of less than 4%. I'd like to see that survey, Mitch, by the way. They're probably just saying that. Do they really have a survey of 90% of their customers having an interest rate of less than 4%? I'm curious. I'm very curious where they got that. But anyways, that explains customers' hesitance to get a new mortgage or take out a loan for major home projects with higher interest rates, he added. They go on to say a dramatic shift one way or another in overall consumer sentiment. But people are waiting for a housing turnover to go up. So this is what they're saying. Last thing here, Mitch, comparable sales, an industry metric that takes out one-time factors like store openings and store closings, dropped, and here's the key, 5.1% as the company said customers took on fewer discretionary home projects. An unfavorable, they're saying, weather hurt sales of outdoor seasonal items. Mitch, I really want to talk about how they just make excuses for everything, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to rant about that. I just want, first question to you is, when we read that and we look under the hood and we look at those numbers, what does that tell us about consumer spending?
Lowe's and Home Depot in combination have basically said the exact same thing, which is that the sales per month are clearly decreasing and per quarter are clearly decreasing. However, the rest of the article was designed to fit a narrative that is completely missing 2 points. One of which is, what in the world makes you think that somebody has the evidence that the Fed is going to lower interest rates. I'm not saying they aren't. However, it's a 50-50 one way or the other. And then the second one of which is the amount of home sales that are actually occurring in certain areas where there are bidding wars. I want to break that down to help everybody understand that if you buy $1 million home and you go and pay $100,000 over that $1 million home as established in the marketplace today, and you take on a 30-year mortgage, let's just say, forget what the interest rates are going to do, all right? 3 years ago, you were 2%. Today, they're 7.5% or 8%. Okay, so give or take, that's a 300 or 400% increase in interest rates. Sure, does a consumer want those interest rates to go down? Yeah, but we have an inflation problem created by the government. So let's look at the mortgages to see the economic damage that'll be done to somebody who overpays a house and gets into a bidding war. They can overbid by 50,000, 100,000, it doesn't matter. So we've quantified that the damage done by the fraud, give or take, is between 35 and 40%. In other words, that $1 million home, its true value is closer to $600,000. So the person who overpaid by $100,000 is not only going to lose the 100 grand, they're going to lose 300 to 400 on top. If mom and pop, or mom or pop, lose a job, the reality is they just took a $500,000 bullet to their balance sheet. And therein lies the real big problem. So when they say people are foregoing expansions on their homes, well, they should be foregoing the homes, because the reality is if you overpay for a house, you got a big problem.
Well, there's a lot of big problems. So, obviously it shows purchasing power is dead. Maybe it's because of the, everything bubble, fraud, corruption, greed, Federal Reserve, call it what you want. But what impact, Mitch, can you explain to the viewers what impact that consumer spending is going to have on the economy? And essentially, could it lead to, consumer spending unraveling like this? Can that lead to unemployment?
It will lead to unemployment, because you've already seen it. It's already the situation in the 4,000 restaurants in California that have closed in the last 11 months. That's a lot of jobs. So all those jobs are now gone. Government in California says, well, we're going to raise the minimum wage. Yeah, they raised it so much that people don't have a job. And therein lies the problem. They talk, they do stupid things, and the net result is loss of jobs. The net result is hyperinflation in your grocery stores. The net result is systems, supply chains that are broken that drive the cost up. You can't get parts. If you can't get parts and the costs are driven up, mom and pop aren't going to spend. Is mom and pop the tipping point? Could be. I think the real tipping point will come from an institution on the first one that collapses, and then they won't be able to save this. But the net result is, yeah, mom and pop don't have the disposable money, which we've been pounding the table on in every one of these videos. It's just simply not there to be had.
Yeah, and it's a vicious cycle once it starts, Mitch. I mean, that's really what we're trying to also say. It's a cumulative destruction. It's a compounding domino. You're going to get hurt. So if you're preparing right now, you probably, it's not even a guarantee. That's what sucks. You're probably going to get hurt less. Now I want to shift this video to data manipulation, Mitch, and I want to read some of this for you, and I want to explain to the viewers again. And I'm going to ask the question when I'm done reading this, who can we trust? But you guys take a look at this. Big shout out to Census Gurus on X. Okay, so this is X. Give him some love. But I thought that, and also to Melody Wright, who sent this to me. You guys, this is freaking bananas. This is absolutely crazy. Again, beyond a shadow of doubt, there's data manipulation going on. Does the U.S. Census data fabricate retail sales data? Remember, the market was like, great, retail sales data is fantastic. The market rallies, everyone spends their money again. Everything is great. They appear to, at least in subcategory 444, which is building material and garden equipment and supplier dealers. How do they know that the U.S. Census Bureau is manipulating this data? Well, the Census Bureau says the category grew on a year-over-year basis in July by 5.3%. But here's the crazy thing, you guys. Unfortunately for them, they have these people, the Census Bureaus, and they point out that Home Depot, we did a video on this, and Lowe's account for 50% of that category. And they both show sales are down for July, both Home Depot and Lowe's. And so with Home Depot and Lowe's, July sales down big, not a little, you guys. This implies that the rest of the category needed to grow by 16.5% to arrive at the number that they came up with. That would be the highest July increase ever recorded. You guys see where I'm going with this? All of the important retails are pointing to July declines, not going up, the biggest of which has already disclosed negative 5% in July. And what is going on in the most important end market, new home construction. How can this go up? New home construction is also down. We just received the data from the same census, and unit construction of new homes was down 9.5% year over year. And it has this little breakdown here. Again, you know, it underestimated Lowe's. Lowe's is actually worse than this. So that would mean all the other stores would have to go up more than 16.5%. But Mitch, here's the thing. The math straight up ain't adding up. And so my question is, and maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but my question is what incentive do they have to lie to us? I mean, it's clearly data manipulating. So my question is why? Why do that? What do they have to gain?
Well, what you're looking at is politically motivated economic statistics for the sole purpose of keeping the fraud going. And who are the beneficiaries of the fraud? Well, obviously the fraudsters. And who are they? Well, it's the school districts, it's the politicians, it's anybody who makes their living on the backs of stealing taxpayer money. You go full circle all the way back to the CADs because that's the economic engine, that's where they get the money from. So it's the central appraisal districts that are committing fraud straight across the United States. We've now got the information, and they do it because they want to keep the fraud going. They do it just like you saw in Fort Worth at the Tarrant Appraisal District when those school districts stood up. Emily the Wolf's letter and email clearly stating, here's the school districts. And they said, if you don't keep the fraud going, you don't keep increasing property values, we are bankrupt. I got news for you. You're bankrupt today, never mind in the future.
Yeah, even with the fraud.
Yes.
And I just did a video this morning, Mitch. I don't know if you saw it, but I was like, you guys, here's record revenue through the appraisal districts, right, for the municipalities. And I'm like showing them this chart of this increased revenue. And I'm like, you guys, they're still broke. That's how bad the fraud is. I mean, the overvaluation is not even enough to cover the decades of fraud that is going on. And, you know, it brings me to the next thing, Mitch. I mean, once someone lies to me, you know, I could more than likely 99.9% chance I will never trust you again, right? Leave that 0.01% chance because, you know, I believe in second chances, whatever. But who can the people trust?
The answer is they shouldn't be trusting anybody associated with taking their money. So Charles Stafford, in reality, said it best. He was the board member of Denton Central Appraisal District who stated, Mr. Spencer, you and your team are the masters at guessing. Well, the people that you just referred to in that memo have one job to do. They can't even get that job done legitimately or right, and or they're lying coming out of the chute and they know they're lying. Either way, the data's bad. So you end up with politically motivated guesstimating. It is complete BS.
Maybe we shouldn't trust our politicians. Maybe,
well, as I said, voting matters, and you've got to stop voting morons into office. Otherwise, you're responsible for putting these people in, and it's got to stop because it will stop the hard way. I mean, this is going to stop, ideally, a much easier method. If not, it will stop the hard way because just like you've seen Venezuela, Argentina, this is what happens when you start monking, and the monking has been going on for a long time now. But we're now at that tipping point because 152 trillion and 142 trillion are going to be neck and neck in 12 months. There will be a default. And all I like everybody to understand is the reason why you want to eliminate property taxes is because that makes your balance sheet where it should be. It puts the power back in the hands of the people, and you're working to pay off something over a 30-year period that is your asset, not something that goes on in perpetuity as it has for the last 30 years, paying the government's money based on theft. Like the system USPAP is completely ignored. Texas Property Tax Code, completely ignored. Texas Constitution, completely ignored. Well, if they're going to ignore the law, that's the point that we're making to the judge. Either the law exists or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, there simply is no reason for anybody to be paying the property taxes. You want to dance down that road? Fine. Stop everybody from paying the property taxes. The governments are bankrupt. Done. I don't care. One way or the other, it's going to be the end result if these people don't fix the mess that they've created.
I mean, the question is who can we trust? And I mean, and you hit the nail on the head within the first millisecond, which is no one. And I will say also, Mitch, I mean, and if you guys do decide to trust, okay, fine, but verify, right? Don't blindly trust. Now, I want to move on to the next part of this, which is talking about a potentially even bigger issue, which is commercial real estate. I mean, seriously, my God. And I want the viewers to understand what you've been saying, Mitch. Now, first of all, Mitch just sent me this today, literally, I don't know, a few hours before we hit record here. This is someone that owns all 5 of these commercial properties. They owe this lender, this bank, $577 million. And the crazy thing here is they have multiple different properties. They have, looks like 2 offices. They have a golf course that's not part of the subdivision. And they have historical buildings as well. This is crazy. And what I want to point out is they're trying to auction this because people don't want this. The only people that can even afford this to begin with, they don't want to touch it. So there's a massive commercial real estate meltdown going on. But what I wanted to point out and what I wanted to ask Mitch, is this the bigger problem? Mitch, is it safe to assume that $577 million, when we look at how they slice that up and make different types of securities and things like that, is it safe to assume that it could actually be $2 to $3 billion at risk, not just $577 million?
The amount at risk is probably 5 times what they're actually looking at in terms of the equity. So what they're doing there is they're auctioning off, in theory, their equity positions. The problem is that if somebody bought an equity position, they are still subject to paying the debt that's in front of the equity. So what exactly are you buying? Then it becomes a question of A, what am I really buying in terms of value? B, what is the underlying asset really worth? I would suggest to you that theater that you saw there in the bottom left-hand corner, yeah, it's probably worth land minus demolition. Now the question then becomes, if you sit on the land, what's the land really worth? You're gonna have to discount it backwards using some formula, net present value or what have you. But the bottom line is, this is no panacea. I mean, they're auctioning off their position because they've got a problem.
These people owe the lender $577 million, but more than likely, because of all of the dissecting, there's probably more like $2 billion on the hook. Meanwhile, the collateral, because there's a meltdown going on in commercial real estate, may only be worth $300 million at this point. So there's a big problem. And Mitch, that brings me to this question. Is this the bigger problem? We know that consumer spending is really important for the economy, but I can't help but note like the billions of dollars in losses in commercial real estate. Is this the bigger problem?
Yeah, so just to be clear, they're trying to auction off their equity. So equity positions could be, say, they put down 25% originally. So you'll have 3 to 4 times the size of that equity position at play with those lenders. So if you were to buy the equity position, you are still subject to paying off the debt. The problem is that the lenders have assets on the books that A, the equity is going to get wiped out, and B, the asset value itself is greatly below what the equity's got in it. So they're just simply trying to get out for anything that they can get because they've got a problem. Is there a real value there? Depends on who the buyer is. But it doesn't change the fact that there's got to be an agreed settlement between all the parties. You can't just slide in and say, okay, I'm going to pay X for the equity and think that you've got an asset that's worth something, because clearly you don't. I mean, what's a theater worth? In today's world, what's a theater worth?
A liability, I mean.
Well, that's the point. Even if that's no different than the office buildings I mentioned in downtown Denver. Unbelievably stunning buildings.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is they're demolition material. And even if you tore them down, it takes money to tear them down. So what's it worth? It's got negative value. Those buildings are literally worth probably negative $8 million, $9 million, give or take.
That's Mitch. I mean, is that the bigger problem?
Yes. Straight across the board. I mean, everybody that's got these office buildings that can't be converted into something, it's a horrible problem. The 4-star hotel world, Sheraton Times Square being torn down, Hilton Times Square being torn down, because the land that's under those buildings is worth more than the buildings because they're functionally obsolescent. What are you looking at, a theater? Functionally obsolescent. What are you looking at in a golf course? Well, it depends. If there's additional land on the outside of the golf course that you can turn into a subdivision, you may have something. If it's just a golf course itself, go ahead. Go and look at the operating statement. You'll be shocked. It isn't making any money. I mean,
It's not making.
they're very hard. A golf course is something that's very difficult to operate. There's a handful of people in the United States that are really good at it, and there's a lot of people that really suck at it.
Well, I think they may suck at it, Mitch, because they're auctioning those properties. Mitch, I just wanted to say, I want to give you the last words. But first, I wanted to give you and let the viewers know to give Mitch a big thank you for his help over the last 2 to 3 weeks. The body of work that you've helped me create and helped educate the viewers, Mitch, has been, I feel like you've taken us levels ahead. And I wanted to thank you for that. And again, to the viewers, show Mitch some love. Mitch, can you just anything you want to kind of end on?
Well, many years ago when I was 8 years old, my dad took me to Peerless Ice Cream, which is on Olette Avenue in Windsor, Ontario, and to explain to me the difference between socialism and a social policy. And it is a really big difference. If you look at Britain today, the riots in the streets, you look at Paris, the riots in the streets, yes, a lot of it has to do with illegal immigration, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that Britain, Paris, Argentina, Venezuela, they have become straight up socialist countries. And I left a country because of that problem. That country was Canada. A guy like me didn't fit in. And now what you're seeing in the United States by these debts that have been created that cannot be paid off is the slide into socialism, just like Canada. And the problem is that the debts are so large, unless people step up and get involved and eliminate these real estate property taxes, these problems that are occurring in other countries are going to happen here. And that's why we're pounding the table to anybody that will listen, and we're creating these videos, and we're having meetings with what I believe will be people who can help, politicians who actually give a damn. And we'll find out shortly. But the bottom line is, one way or the other, this has got to stop, or it will stop on its own. And I believe that we need to be in front of the market and not let the market run us over.
100%, man. And, just for the viewers, big thank you to the 1,200 people, almost 1,300 people that did sign the petition. If you guys want to be a part of the movement, you want to stop this, you want to move on to something that's fair, sign the petition. That's step one. If you have money, open the lawsuits. Obviously, Mitch knows more about that. And, we're working on step 2, guys. Not quite ready to give you guys step 2. Mitch held me back to give step 2, so we'll go over that another day. And other than that, guys, really appreciate you. Have a great Tuesday evening. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment below, share the video, like it. And other than that, if you guys are out there investing in real estate, you guys already know we wish you luck, and we hope you win.